Hello students, now let's talk about the Unit 2 of Module 20 titled Reference Styles and Research Ethics. Researchers draw from the works of other scholars in the context of examining the results of previous studies, exploring new phenomena within the framework of existing theories, and in comparing their findings with those of other researchers. In all such instances, it is mandatory to give credit to scholars whose ideas and statements are adapted, summarized, adapted or quoted. Likewise, it is obligatory on the part of the researchers to follow research ethics. The referencing styles and research ethics are dealt in this unit. Referencing and style manuals. Referencing is a way of acknowledging the source of information used in one's report, thesis, book, or any other document. It is morally and legally binding on the part of the researchers to acknowledge the source of information. Those who fail to do so would be accused of violating copyrights and plagiarism. Plagiarism is an act of presenting someone else's material as one's own without citing and referencing the source of the material. The materials include verbatim or paraphrased text, concepts, theories, data, and the like. Referencing has two parts. First, the source of the material is cited within the text. Citing sources within the text is referred to as in-text citation or text citation or citing in text. Each in-text citation will have author's last name and the year of publication of the author's work in parentheses, either in the beginning or at the end of the summarized, paraphrased, or quoted text depending on the sentence structure. When the author's last name is part of the narrative, the year of publication is placed in the parentheses soon after the name as shown here. According to Kerlinger, ex post facto research is a retrospective study of independent variables, relations with, and possible effect on the dependent variables. When the author's last name is not in the narrative, the name and the year of publications are placed in the parenthesis at the end of the sentence, as shown here. Ex post facto research is a retrospective study of independent variables' relations with and their possible effect on the dependent variables. When the author is quoted, the quoted text will be in quotation marks and the page number of the quote is placed in parentheses at the end of the quotation, as shown here. As Kerlinger explains, in ex post facto studies, the independent variables in retrospect for their possible relations to and effect on the dependent variable or variables. The second part of the referencing is to give the full details of all in-text cited source in reference section, which is generally placed at the end of the research article, thesis, or research report. The details provided in references will help readers locate and ready their cited material to broaden their knowledge. The rule of thumb in respect of in-text citation and references is everything cited in the text must appear in the reference list, and likewise everything that appears in the reference list must be cited in the text. Now let's talk about the style manuals. Both citations and referencing are done following the guidelines laid out by the standard style manuals such as MLA Style Manual, Publication Manual of APA, Chicago Manual of Style, and Harvard Style. The Harvard referencing style owes its origin to Harvard University professor Edward Lorenz, who is reported to have used the style in one of his papers in 1881. The history of Chicago Manual of Style goes back to a style guide for American English published in 1906 by the University of Chicago. The history of APA style history goes back to 1929, and the MLA style appeared first in 1951. Now let's talk about differences in APA and MLA styles. The citation and referencing styles differ from one style system to another. For in-text citation, MLA, APA, and Harvard are parenthetical style, while Oxford has note style. In parenthetical style, the in-text citation are provided within parentheses, either in the beginning or at the end of summarized, paraphrased, or quoted text, depending on the sentence structure. Let us compare in-text citation styles of APA and MLA. APA in-text citation style. In APA, when the cited author's last name is part of narrative, the year of publication is placed in parentheses soon after the name as shown here. According to Kerlinger, ex post facto research is a retrospective study of independent variables, relations with and possible effect on the dependent variables. When the author's last name is not in the narrative, the name and year of publication are placed in parentheses at end of the sentence as shown here. Ex post facto research is a retrospective style of independent variables, relations with and their possible effect on the dependent variables. When the author is quoted, the quoted text will be in quotation marks and the page number of the quote is placed in parentheses at the end of the quotation as shown here. As Kerlinger explains in ex post facto studies, the independent variables in retrospect for their possible relations to and effect on the dependent variable are or variables. Now let's discuss on MLA in text citation style. In text citations, author's last name and page numbers are placed in parentheses without the punctuation mark of comma. If the cited author's last name does not appear in the text, it is placed at the end of the paraphrase text of the cited author as shown here. Ex post facto research is a retrospective study of independent variables, relations with and their possible effect on the dependent variables. When the cited author's last name is part of the narrative, the page number is placed in parentheses at the end of the paraphrase text as shown here. According to Kerlinger, ex post facto research is a retrospective study of independent variables, relations with and possible effect on the dependent variables. In case of the quoted text too, the page numbers is placed in parentheses at the end of the quotation as shown here. As Kerlinger explains, in ex post facto studies, the independent variables in retrospect for their possible relations to and effect on the dependent variable or variables. Let's now discuss on the referencing styles. The referencing styles of APA and MLA differ considerably in sequencing of the elements of the book, articles in journals and website platforms. The referencing formats along with an example shown below bring clarity about the APA referencing style. In the APA referencing formats, author's last name, initial or initials of the first and the middle name, book title, subtitle, city of publication, publisher. Now let's discuss about what are the footnotes and endnotes. Footnotes and endnotes are two options to give additional information or to expand on a thought not in the body text, but outside of it. Additional information given at the bottom of the page is called a footnote. Additional information placed at the end of the document is known as endnote. Both footnotes and endnotes will have a superscript number above the text, and its corresponding note will have the superscript number as shown here. Dear students, now let's talk about research ethics. Research is as an enterprise based on mutual regard and trust among researchers, participants, academics, and related organizations. Broadly, research ethics refers to a wide variety of values, norms, and institutional arrangements that help constitute and regulate scientific activities. Research ethics is a codification of research morality in practice. Hence, those engaged in research are required to follow ethics, the norms for conduct. Broadly, there are two types of ethical forms, internal and external. Internal ethics involve the norms that relate to research communities' good practices such as academic freedom, originality, and the norms related to researchers' integrity, accountability, impartiality, and the like. External ethics include the norms relating to respect, human dignity, confidentiality, and anonymity of participants in research, and the norms such as independence, conflicts of interest, and social responsibility that regulate relationships between research and the society at large. Students, now let's discuss about the principles of research ethics. The primary responsibility for the conduct of ethical research lies within the researchers. Most institutions frame guidelines for research ethics which, by and large, are based on the general ethical principles proposed by Kishner. The principles are 1. Fidelity, 2. Autonomy, 3. Beneficence, 4th. Non-maleficence, 5th being justice, and the last and important one being academic freedom. Students, now let's discuss about fidelity. Fidelity includes the norms of integrity, trustworthiness, honesty, credibility, and standard citation practice. For example, the cited text of another author must be accurate and the source of the text must be cited in the research documents. As pointed out earlier, using others' material as one's own is plagiarism. Plagiarism undermines the reputation of the researcher, his or her work, and the institution. Now let's discuss on autonomy. In research, the autonomy of the participants must be maintained by recognizing their rights to privacy, anonymity, and confidentiality of personal data that they share with the researchers. Researchers must inform the participants of the research purpose and obtain their consent. Now let's talk of beneficence. The principle of beneficence underpins the core idea that research should bring some benefits, direct or indirect, to the society and contribute to the body of knowledge. The next aspect being non-maleficence. The principle of non-maleficence is no harm principle. It directs the researchers to ensure that the research does not cause any harm to the participants. In social science research, harm will not be physical but could be emotional, such as mental distress. At times, some questions would emotionally disturb the respondents. Hence, effort should be made to make research free of harm to others. The next aspect which we have to deal is with justice. Justice in research involves fairness and equity of treatment for participants. Academic freedom. This is the right of the researcher to plan and do research freely without any external interferences from their institutions, funding agencies, government bodies, and organizations with commercial interests. Now let's talk about what we have discussed in this particular unit. This module has provided essential details of how to prepare theses, research articles, and research reports using standard reference manuals and commonly accepted research norms in ethics. The principles of research ethics cannot be compromised. This will help researchers avoid plagiarism and copyright violation. Dear students, read the module text and the suggested books to enhance your knowledge in all aspects of reporting research. Thank you.